Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm absolutely honored to have back on the show once again, renowned and published author and writer, independent researcher, investigator, and reporter, public speaker and educator, whistleblower to whistleblowers of ritual abuse, mind control, and organized abuse, one of my personal inspirations, a man who has inspired many of you, and a man who was way before his time, who has pioneered the survivor movement in ways that are just now starting to truly be recognized, Fritz Springmeier. A little bit about Fritz if you're new here, and a little bit as well about what we will be discussing today. In the depths of humanity's darkest hour, when shadows of control threaten to extinguish the human spirit, a single flame rises, unquenchable, unbreakable, eternal. That flame is Fritz Springmeier, the fearless whistleblower, the tireless warrior of truth, and the radiant beacon who has given hope to the hopeless, healing to the broken, and courage to the silenced. Born into a world of hidden chains, Fritz saw what others refused to see. Generations of elite bloodlines wielding unimaginable power through trauma-based mind control, ritual abuse, and a relentless agenda to enslave the soul. With the fire of conviction burning in his heart, he refused to remain silent. Armed only with relentless research, a master's degree in English, and an unshakable faith in God and human freedom, he forged masterpieces that would become lifelines for survivors trapped in unimaginable darkness. His groundbreaking collaboration with survivor Cisco Wheeler, the Illuminati formula used to create an undetectable total mind control slave, became more than a book. It became salvation. For countless men and women fractured by Monarch and MKUltra programming, dissociation, and ritual horror, Fritz's words offered the first glimpse of light, validation that their pain was real, explanations that shattered the lies, and practical pathways toward deprogramming and recovery. Survivors who once believed escape was impossible found in his work the roadmap to reclaim their minds, their identities, and their lives. Undetectable no more. His message echoes as a battle cry of liberation, turning victims into empowered warriors who rise to tell their stories and break the cycle of abuse. As a captivating lecturer through the Prophecy Club and beyond, Fritz's voice thundered across stages, demystifying occult symbols, numerology, and elite manipulations. He inspired generations, from researchers to everyday awakeners, to question, to seek, and to fight. His influence ripples through the works of visionaries and endures in archives, forums, and hearts, even as engineered crises test humanity's resolve. Persecution came, as it always does, for those who threaten the shadows. False charges, a conviction, years behind bars. Yet Fritz emerged unbroken, his spirit forged stronger in the fire. Many see these trials as the ultimate proof of his impact. The powerful fear only those who refuse to yield. From his current sanctuary, he continues his divine calling to dismantle the New World Order and restore sovereignty to every soul. Today, with Fritz at the helm, we will be beginning a discussion around programming and trauma-based mind control, painting the bigger picture of its origins and history, what it is, the reason for its continued proliferation, and much more. Fritz is no ordinary man. He is humanity's champion, a living testament that one voice raised in truth can shatter chains, heal wounds, and ignite revolutions of the spirit. To survivors, he is the first hand extended in the darkness, whispering, "You are not alone. You can heal. You can rise." To the world, he is blazing proof that hope endures, that courage conquers fear, and that light will always triumph over darkness. In a time when despair whispers defeat, Fritz stands as our reminder. The human spirit is unbreakable. With every revelation, every survivor freed, every heart awakened, he proves that together we can reclaim our destiny. So rise with him, shine with him, for in Fritz's light we can find our own, and the future belongs to the free. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming back today's guest of honor, voice for the voiceless, survivor advocate, man of God, tireless and passionate purveyor of truth, and someone who has changed and saved more lives than he will ever know, the one, the only, Fritz Springmeier. Fritz, it is an honor to have you on today. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Emma. And hi to all the listeners out there.
It was an honor to have you on before, and the response was just incredible. Everybody was so happy to hear from you again. And we really talked about some interesting topics of more of the modern day mind control and some of the nuances that aren't talked about a lot. But I know you had some experiences on your end as well with having so much support and outreach. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that for a minute because it was pretty neat.
Yeah, in one way it was. I got dozens. I have no idea how many people responded to me being on the show and sent emails. Maybe 5 dozen emails. And it was, unfortunately, I have to apologize to people. It was overwhelming. I don't have a whole lot of time, and I only got like a couple dozen people answered. And so most people didn't even get an answer to their email. And then unfortunately, the books that people really wanted, and I'll show one of them here. This, and this is still in its plastic wrap. It's ready. I only have one copy of this. It's the deeper insights, and it's got, as it says down here, how the help comes about. And I had one copy of that and one copy of its uh, predecessor, the formula book that you gave the title to earlier. And I was trying to get that into the hands of people that sent me emails that said they were therapists, but the 2 therapists that I offered it to didn't take me up on buying it. So the few copies I did have didn't go out because I was trying to get them in the hands of therapists. And I had dozens of other people that wanted it, and I don't have any inventory to take care of them. So I'm really sorry. I'm sorry about all of that. Yeah, the response was overwhelming, Emma. And I have done shows since 1990, and I have never gotten a response from a show like yours. So you have a great group of listeners, great audience, and I have to applaud you for that because that speaks highly of you too. Um, so yeah, we talked about the modern things. You hinted just now that you would like to look more into the history of things. So if we there's several ways I was able to realize how far this goes back. So one way is that the Germans and Italians, before World War II got started, they were investigating, they were trying to put this trauma-based mind control on a more scientific basis. And they realized that it had been done by the ancient Egyptians. And so they went back, they sent Italian and German archaeologists back to ancient Egypt, this is in the 1930s, to read the hieroglyphics to understand what the Egyptians had written about the trauma-based mind control. Well, when I say hieroglyphics, it could also have been hieratic because their cursive was hieratic. Hieroglyphics was just their stylized writing for the monuments. Every day was hieratic. But anyway, that shows that it goes clear back to ancient Egypt. Another way of understanding how old this is in the when they create a program slave, they give the slave a code number. And part of that code number is how many generations in their bloodline they've been programming. It's sort of like right now I'm a newspaper editor, and I have in the corner it says edition and issue. The edition is how many years my paper has been published, and then like this year is 141, and then now I'm on the fourth issue, the fourth week. So they have something similar with their mind control slaves. And this one person who was a Rothschild had the generation number as 44. So, and this was in the 1990s. So you go 44 generations back from 1990. That's a long time. That's before the Rothschilds even had the name Rothschild. And in the Rothschilds' secret genealogy books, they say that they go back to Nimrod. So there you have it. There's a lot of antiquity in this. In terms of dealing with the people that have received trauma-based mind control and are programmed DID or programmed multiple personalities, in relating to other therapists, because in the 1990s, I was attending conferences where there would be other therapists, and I would interact and rub shoulders with them. And it turns out that the therapists today, like in the 1990s, were aware of clients coming in for counseling that go back to World War I. And those were being programmed by British intelligence. So we know that British intelligence had gotten involved by World War I. Prior to that, we know that a lot of the programming was within the Illuminati bloodlines. And I wrote this book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati. And when I started working with those 4 women that had been teamed in the Illuminati that were trying to escape it and were a support system for each other, that was in 1991. There were 2 things that I had already been investigating the Illuminati for a while, thousands of hours of research, but they highlighted 2 issues. One was the bloodlines, and the other was the mind control. And so prior to meeting them, I had been working on a book called Be Wise as Serpents, which I came out with in 1991, the rough draft form, that is. And later, then I wrote the Bloodlines book and the formula book and its sequel, Deeper Insights, to discuss the 2 issues that they had highlighted. They also talked a lot about rituals. And you might ask the question, well, why Why would people want to totally control someone? Well, there are numerous reasons. Numerous reasons. One is if you go back to ancient Egypt, the pharaoh is going to have to pass his throne to his son, like maybe his oldest son, and he wants to ensure that that son will carry out the agendas and do things like he should. So, of course, mind control is a wonderful way to perpetuate that. Uh, so, they had dream temples back there in Egypt, which where they practiced what we call hypnosis. They had eels that could electroshock people, just like we have now stun guns. They they had torture and trauma back then. So the basic elements of trauma-based mind control existed back then. They weren't as refined and put on such a scientific level as now, but they were there.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
As somebody who's very familiar with the Bible, have you come across any text in scripture that allude to mind control or DID or SRA? Anything that you've studied? Have you seen any artifacts or relics of that biblically?
Yeah, some of I can't remember offhand his name, but one of the kings of Israel suffered trauma-based mind control. And when we read the words of Christ, it's translated brokenhearted, but in the original, in the Hebrew original, it says people who have been shattered, and it's more descriptive. It says, he says, I came to heal the brokenhearted, but in the original, it really has more of meaning of I came to rescue those who have had their lives shattered. And that's indeed what happens with the trauma-based mind control is they shatter the person's mind when they prefer at 18 months. They consider that the ideal age to start shattering the child's mind. And those are the people that Christ said he came to save. And yeah, the people that are subjected to the trauma-based mind control, at least in the past, they they were very good at dissociation, and generally they were very intelligent. So a lot of intelligent people out there have unfortunately been subjected to this. Should I keep going, or did you have another question?
Go ahead.
So, yeah, I introduced the concept of bloodlines, and they gave me the names of the top 13 bloodlines that the Illuminati has put in a special category of their top 13. And that's a little bit in mockery of the tribes of Israel, because as you know, there were 12 tribes, but the tribe of Joseph was split into Ephraim and Manasseh, so that actually makes 13 tribes. But anyway, one of the things that I was able to do, and I'll just show it here, was I was able to make, there we go. Okay. I don't know how well that shows up, but I was able to do the genealogy research to show how 25 American presidents are closely related and how they tie in to these Illuminati bloodlines. So not only are they closely related, but they tie back to these Illuminati bloodlines. So the thing is that we thought that when we had our revolution, we were going to get away from aristocracy, that we were going to create a country where anybody has equal access to power and success and opportunity. And to some degree, we did, at least far more than what Europe had. But there was still this hidden side to America that the elite, the British, as well as these bloodlines, still came in and dominated America. And one example of that's the Astor family. During the American Revolution, the first Astor to come over to America, he lived in New York City. And during the American Revolution, New York City, most of the time was under King George's control, the British control. British Army was located there, and thousands of troops. And he he was given the contract to provide the meat for that. So right there, you see him getting special treatment, that he got this contract, which is basically a monopoly. And then after the American Revolution, here's somebody who's an outsider. He can't hardly even speak English. He speaks English really poorly with a thick German accent. He gains control over the entire fur trade. Now that is mind-boggling. That's absolutely mind-boggling, because the fur trade had been going on for centuries. And for someone to just move in and in a few years to take control of it, it's mind-boggling. So what they do is they set their own people up to be rich and powerful. So when you see people like Elon Musk, I mean, come on, people, wake up. There's something behind that. It's not, of course, the press is going to say this person's got their position because they're incredibly brilliant and way beyond everybody else. But no, there's more to it. And so these bloodlines have dominated America, like the DuPonts. They came over from France and they received contracts all along through all of our wars. They had the contracts to produce the munitions. If you think of how much money is wrapped up in munitions in a war, and then they're the ones that are making money off of these wars, an incredible amount. And then, of course, they branched out into chemicals and paint and so forth. But originally, they were producing the munitions for the U.S. military. It's just mind-boggling. So that's examples of these top bloodlines. And there are examples of these bloodlines even today, and past examples, which show that they were DID. And going back to the original discussion, how long's this mind control been going on? I have a reference book, and when I saw it, I snagged it, I bought it. It's a reference book on references about multiple personality disorder. If someone wrote a book about multiple personality disorder, it's in this book. It's it's a reference book for you to see what all's been written on the subject. And it goes back to the American Revolution. multiple personality disorder has been around for a long time, identified for a long time, and so it's nothing new. And then there's also books, like I have this one book that's in German, and it's talking about demon possession. It's pretty old, but when you read through it, you realize, no, this is trauma-based mind control right here that it's talking about. And that was in the 1800s. So people were publicly bumping into this stuff even before therapists began dealing. Um, yeah, I'll let you ask another question here. We
A
don't
lot
have to
of
have a.
we could listen to you talk all day, Fritz. As far as tracing bloodlines, and you said you've seen examples of DID in modern day leadership and authority. Have you done research on some of the, I'm sure you have, the presidents that have been most recent in history, and anything that you found out about them and their relations either together or to past presidents?
The most obvious example of trauma-based mind control is George Bush Jr., who was the second George Bush president. And I have a book. It's bloopers by stupid things that George Bush said. And I mean, these are real quotes. And you read through there and you realize that some of his alters that talked publicly and said really stupid things, some of his alters were clueless about how the U.S. government is put together, how it functions. Um, the guy was a pretty bad mental wreck. Of course, his dad was head of the CIA, and the CIA is strongly, heavily involved with the trauma-based mind control, and they are one of the big groups that came after me when I started tampering with these victims of Illuminati mind control. It wasn't. I mean, the Illuminati was right there. I had members of the Illuminati that were getting involved with shutting me down and trying to access and use the survivors I was trying to help. But along with that, the CIA got involved and monitoring me and messing with my life. They went around and told everybody that knew me negative things about me to turn all my people against me. And in some cases, they actually succeeded in turning people against me. Um, in other cases, the people just ignored them and told me what was happening. Um, yeah, so yeah, the CIA has been heavily involved in trauma-based mind control. And if you have a father or a mother that's been in the CIA, then that's a red flag that you very possibly may have been subjected to mind control. That he's the best example of someone who's program multiple. His mother was big into Freemasonry. His dad was big into Freemasonry. That's another red flag, is if your parents and grandparents were into Freemasonry. That's another red flag to indicate that you may have been subjected to mind control. Trump, on the flip side of that question, you know, uh, and I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm not trying to attack Trump, but it's pretty well known that Trump is involved with the Epstein Island and all of that. And different people that come forward and say that they were victims of Trump. And I even mentioned Trump clear back in my formula book. I give a list of handlers and programmers. I listed them clear back. That would have been like 1995 or something. So, that was long before he ran for president. So, Trump's an example of someone on the flip side. And in fact, I'm gonna go out on a limb here because this is I don't like to say things that are going to damage what I know really solid, but I do know that they're able to replicate people and create, you know, uh, what look like synthetic people. And I really wonder, besides the fact that they have doubles for Trump, I just wonder if when we look at Putin and Trump, we're even looking at the original Trump. You know, I wonder if we're looking at the original Putin. I know I have seen in like there was a news clip of Putin going to occupied Ukraine. That was not him. It was obviously a double. Um, so sometimes they're using doubles, but they may be using something else too. Um, anyway, Trump supposedly is very old, and how many old people do you see running around like he's running around? So there's more going on there than meets the eye.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering that. It's something that I think your work really pioneered are the bloodlines. And I know it's expanded outside of that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as we sort of build onto this narrative that we're discussing. But for people who might be a little bit newer to the bloodlines, why were bloodlines something that were connected and important to trauma-based mind control?
Very good question. It was essential. And the reason why is because the way the trauma-based mind control works is they traumatize a little child. Okay, picture this. You're 18 months old and they do such severe trauma in special programming centers. I mean, these are basically sort of like hospital type settings where because you could easily die. You're traumatized so bad, but they traumatize these little children, and you can do one of three things. The trauma can just simply kill you, and true, some of the children die, or the trauma just drives you crazy, and there's some of the children that just absolutely go crazy and they have to be discarded. And then the third possibility is that you are very intelligent and creative, and the mind splits, it becomes dissociative. And the mind says, this isn't happening to me, it's happening to that person over there. It splits, the mind splits to protect itself. The ability to dissociate that much is inherited. And that's why they call it monarch mind control, is because the monarch butterfly was the first animal that taught science that learning is passed from one generation to the next. It's like my dad was an engineer. When I was in seventh grade, I had not done any drafting, manual drafting, where you draw machinery or draw houses. That's drafting. I had not done that, but I was required to take in seventh grade a drafting class. I just naturally knew it. It was like, wow, I know this stuff. I'm good at it. And when I was a freshman, they took some of my drawings to put them on special exhibit because people were just amazed. That I believe was, I learned that genetically, because when I started doing that, I felt like I already knew it. And that's the ability to dissociate enough to become a programmed multiple is passed from one generation to another. You can try it on other people, especially that's what the CIA did, is they went like Loretta Lynn, they identified her father, they identify people that are pedophiles, and then what they would do is they would go in and say, look, you can spend the rest of your life in prison, or you can let us take your child that you've been abusing, and we have this special program to make them successful in life. They will become rich, they will become famous, we can increase their intelligence, but we need you to sign this form that allows us the right to take your child and do what we want with it. And parents do. They sign over their children, and then the child is programmed, and in some cases they become highly successful. A large percentage of the Hollywood stars are programmed multiples. Country western, a lot of the stars in the music industry are trauma-based mind control. And then along with that, they also like to make these people pledge themselves, sign their life away to Satan. Sounds kind of it sounds kind of goofy or whatever, but I bumped into a man who was very good musically, and they said, we can make you a big star. You just need to sign this paperwork. And he read the paperwork, and it said that he would pledge his life to Satan. And he was like, what? He thought they were joking or something at first, but no, they were serious. He wouldn't do it. So some other people he knew that were also good musicians did, So they're, and this gets into another thing. Mind control can be done on many different levels, and so they're doing mind control on the general population all the time. You don't have to control people's thinking just, with the trauma-based mind control. You can use AI, you can use the news media, the mainstream, what some people joke and call the lamestream news media. There's so many different ways to control people's thinking, especially you look at what's going on in the schools, you look at what's going on with our public libraries. Very often, our libraries are controlled by Freemasons. I've known some of them that ran the libraries. Yeah, they have occultists and Freemasons running these libraries, and good books have been discarded or weeded out of the libraries, and they have replaced them with just straight garbage, a lot of occult fiction, Buffy the Dragon Slayer or whatever drivel that they're wanting to inject into our children's minds.
Absolutely. Thank you for outlining that for us. And you mentioned another key component that you had referred to earlier, the Freemasonry, the secret society aspect, even occultism, Satanism, Luciferianism. How does that intersect with the bloodline families? Why were these things brought together, or how are they brought together historically?
Freemasonry is like the glove on the hidden hand. So the Illuminati is a secret society that supposedly doesn't exist in the real world. So they use a semi-secret society, the Freemasons, to have have something that they can grab a hold of to actually do things by. Freemasonry teaches people how to do rituals, how to follow certain instructions and stuff, how to use uh, special passwords, and so forth like this. So, what the Illuminati has done for a couple hundred years is they have had their young men become Freemasons and go through Freemasonry using it as a school to teach their young men certain things. So oftentimes, like Manly P. Hall, he's Freemasonry's greatest philosopher. He died in 1991. He is a 33rd degree Freemason, very incredible person. Um, Manly P. Hall was both a Grand Master in Freemasonry as well as a Grand Master in the Illuminati. So there's an overlap between the two. But Freemasonry depends on a lot of good men. And there's not enough pure, just evil Luciferians in this world to make Freemasonry a success. So I would use the word dupe. They convince what I'm not talking about from God's perspective, because from God's perspective, all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. I'm talking about as far as I'm going to say, as far as people are, these men are good. A lot of them are weak spiritually, but they're decent people. Let's put it that way. They're decent people. And they're convinced that the thing to do is to join Freemasonry. And they join and they get maybe 1 degree or 3 degrees, and they don't go higher than that. And that's called the Blue Lodge. And most Masons never go beyond that. And so their picture of Freemasonry is what they experience in the Blue Lodge. And that foundation is necessary for the higher levels, which get into the more esoteric stuff. And you can go beyond the 33rd degree Freemason to get into the really satanic occult stuff. There are rites beyond the Scottish rite, the rite of Mizraim, the rite of Memphis. Mizraim is another name for Egypt. Memphis is related to Egypt. So you get into Egyptian magic or paganism. And our guest that we were going to have with us, Joshua Abraham, he managed to join Freemasonry and learn things about it. He studied a lot, and he understands how they use religion to some degree, how they use religion in Freemasonry. And the satanic book, the book of the law, is used as one of the holy books by Freemasons. So they put all of the holy books, the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, they put them all on the same level. Christianity is just another tool to manipulate. And see, that's what people don't understand is God is not a vending machine that you put a 25-cent prayer in and you get something out. I mean, a lot of the Christian churches anymore treat God as a vending machine, but that's not what he is. he's the sovereign God of the universe, and he does what he wants. But from Freemasonry's perspective, they see religion, even Christianity, as a tool to use. And this is what shocked me. When I started learning the programming codes, the programming scripts, I was shocked. They're using the programming codes. They're using the Bible for programming codes. They're using the Bible for programming themes. And these people have there's no boundaries. They have no respect for the word of God. They will just abuse anything. It's a real criminal mind.
Do you believe that knowledge of trauma-based mind control has been with secret societies since their inception? Or at what point in time do you think that intersected and collided and that knowledge began being occulted and passed down, how you said, generationally through these secret societies that were in, or excuse me, these bloodlines that were also involved in these secret societies?
So the Illuminati is actually the continuation of the mystery religions. And they have been doing trauma-based mind control since, as far as I know, way back. So the mystery religions, there were mystery religions in Greece. There are other mystery religions in Egypt. These mystery religions and their priesthoods were doing trauma-based mind control, and they were extensions of the Illuminati. The council, that there was a council, and you can read this in Manly P. Hall's book, one of his books. He said that all the mystery religions contributed to a council. So in the ancient world, you had this council made up of representatives from the different mystery religions. That was the Illuminati. So they have been controlling these mystery religions all along. And the mystery religions have been an extension of them to carry out mind control. And the history of Freemasonry goes back to the Illuminati. It's probably more involved than I want to get into here. But I think that if anybody is trying to understand Freemasonry better, they should read. There's a trilogy of books by a trilogy of authors, and the first one, the most important one, was Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and that talks about the Illuminati's 13th bloodline, the Holy Blood. The head of the Illuminati today is from that Holy Bloodline, which is the Merovingians. And people have now caught on to that Holy Bloodline, and now they look, and when somebody's running for president, they start looking to see if they can find in their antecedents descendants that were part of the Merovingians. Invariably they do. So the secret societies have been doing this for all throughout history. So yes, that was a very good question. And the Knights Templars have been involved in this, and the Holy Blood, Holy Grail brings out how this connects to the Knights Templars, how the Freemasons connect. And they make the case in one of their books. So the other two, you've got Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the Messianic Legacy, and the Temple and the Lodge. That's the trilogy of books. And the authors the trilogy of authors that collaborated are Lincoln, Lay, and Pageant. And they make a case. I think it's the Temple and the Lodge book. It's been a lot of years since I read these books. I think it's the Temple and the Lodge where they make an interesting case that the American Revolution was planned by this bloodline, and that they controlled the British generals to allow the Americans to win. And I tell you what, if you're a student of military history, what the British did during the American Revolution, some of their generals, and you just like, well, they had an opportunity to win. They didn't do it. They didn't do anything. And it's pretty amazing. I know that throughout history, there's been a lot of incompetent British generals, but you just look at what happened and you shake your head and go, wow, they really, and I know that the Illuminati wanted United States, the country of United States created. They had some purposes for the United States. So they were heavily involved in the founding of this United States. Now, don't get upset. I also believe that God was involved. I believe that sometimes things can happen, and it's both Satan wanting it and God wanting it. And a lot of times Satan carries out God's plans. So United States has been an instrument for a lot of good. Majority of missionaries over the years have come from the United States. On the other hand, United States has done some horrible things, as well as some very important things to help the Illuminati's agenda. In fact, one of the topics that I wanted to talk about when I'm talking about the Illuminati agenda is I was going to talk about the newer things that they were doing in the mind control. And so what we have happening is the United States is going to develop AI, and the AI is fundamentally involved with the mind control and the control of populations. And then the United States is going to export this technology around the world. So, so there you have the United States leading the world in this Illuminati agenda. Oh my goodness. So, where would you like to go from here?
There's lots of directions that we could go. One of the things that I just wanted to comment that you've mentioned in your research for decades, speaking of the founding of America, was the founding fathers of America. Many of them also were members of Freemasonry and the Illuminati also, which is kind of interesting. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah, the majority of people that signed the Declaration of Independence, they were Freemasons. And this is going to kind of boggle people's mind. So hold on to your seat. Don't let me rock your boat too much. But President George Washington was not the first president of the United States. He was the first president of the United States under the Constitution. But his first term, the Constitution hadn't come in before he became president. So when he first was president, we were still under the Articles of Confederation. Depending on how you look at because there was, they called these men the President of the United States. And initially they were just presidents of the Continental Congress. But later, when we got in Articles of Confederation, they were presidents of the United States under the Articles of Confederation. And those people, by and large, they're like Sinclair. Sinclair's an important bloodline of the Merovingians. They were Illuminati. So not only, was George Washington a Freemason, but his antecedents were Illuminati. I don't think George Washington was. George Washington was he aptly deserves the name the father of this country. But he still held Freemasonry in high regard because at the time he was asked to make a choice. Do you want to stay in your Episcopal church, or for some reason they said you could go to Freemasonry, or you could continue, your church membership, and he chose Freemason. So Freemasonry was important to him, and that's what this book that I was referring to, they bring out how there seemed to be like an understanding between the Freemasons, who were British generals in the American Revolution, and the Freemasons that were American generals, on how they were going to conduct this war and actually prolong it to the point that America won. It's an interesting thesis. I haven't seen absolute proof from inside the Illuminati. I mean, sometimes I can get inside information from the Illuminati that will substantiate something, but I've gotten enough information from inside the Illuminati that makes it extremely likely. Yeah, so but you also have a lot of really decent men of God that felt like the American Revolution would be a good thing. If we understand what the scriptures are about, they talk about liberty in Christ, freedom in Christ. Christ really would like people to be free to serve God, and one of the ways that we can encumbrance ourselves to slavery is to become a slave to sin. You don't have to be actually in chains to be a slave. You can get addicted to pornography. You could get addicted to drugs and enslave yourself that way. So that's why I appreciated your prayer at the beginning, because really at the bottom of things, ultimately, this is a battle between God's kingdom and Satan's kingdom, between what you might call light and dark, or good and bad. It's a war. It's fundamentally a war, and it's been going on for a long time. And you can tell that God exists, because if God didn't exist, and if there wasn't a force for good in the world, darkness would have totally taken over. So yeah, that's it. Let's go on, and I'll let you ask another question here. You ask good questions.
One of the things you mentioned earlier that's really important for people to understand is the passing down generationally of whether it's the actual abuses that they do or these internal inherent traits that lie in our DNA and biological genetics. Are there other biological markers that are important to be passed down that you've discovered through talking to survivors, or other things that are important to be passed down in these families?
There's a whole number of things that are passed down. So one thing is if you go to the scriptures say that God will hold, if you do a really outrageous sin, he will hold that to the third or fourth generation. But there's one sin that traps a bloodline in traps a bloodline for 10 generations. And the Satanists know what this is. It's pedophilia. The scriptures say that the sin of pedophilia will be kept to the 10th generation as a curse. So it curses a generation for 10 generations. You also pass demonic spirits, evil spirits from one generation to another. You also pass, but it's not just the ability to dissociate, but it's a lot of other evil ways of thinking, greed and all kinds of spirits of murder and all kinds of stuff that are passed from one generation to another. Inside an Illuminati coven, they are going to tell you as you grow up in that coven, that you have to be loyal to the family. And the family has done all this great stuff. And then, of course, if you went to the history books, you would see that, like if you were a Rothschild, the Rothschilds have done all kinds of great things. They were the moving force behind the creation of the state of Israel. So there's streets named after the Rothschilds, there's buildings. I mean, the Rothschilds are highly looked up to in Israel. There's all kinds of things named after the Rothschilds, and they have discovered this and that. So they're very famous. And, so you are born into a tribe, a bloodline that's important, has significance, and you're a member of it. It's like school spirit, and you are expected to uphold the traditions and the honor and everything. Don't break ranks with your tribe. Don't break ranks with your bloodline. And so it's a control mechanism. And it's a pride issue. Pride is one of the big vehicles or tools that the kingdom of darkness uses. So yeah, it's very important from a number of ways for this programming to have stayed within the bloodlines. It's just, think of it this way too. Think of how a person feels very proud to be an American, or Russians are very proud to be a Russian. It's that kind of a heritage that's being passed from one generation to another. And so you don't want to break the circle. You don't want to break the traditions. You don't want to upset the apple cart. You don't want to break the agenda that's been passed down from generation to a generation. You want to do your part to bring the agenda in. And that's another reason for the trauma-based mind control, is they are able to do so much. And a lot of people that don't know about the mind control, they could go, well, how could they possibly do this? This is outrageous. These are wild conspiracy theories because nobody can control things enough to do. Yes, with the trauma-based mind control, you can. And it allows them to do a lot of their evil deeds without being called to task about it. And somebody can look really decent. And this is where Joshua Abraham would be able to back me up on this. The Luciferians, which are your program multiples, are far more dangerous than a Satanist. A Satanist who walks out there and acts kind of clownish and, maybe they have actually somehow, I've seen this before. Somebody, I don't know how they got these horns attached to their head, but they actually have horns in their head, you know. Well, you know, it's obvious what they are, you know. But someone who's a Luciferian, they are your pillars of your community. That everybody looks up to them. They have a good front. Their front altars are great. It's what you don't see that's so dangerous. So program multiples can be very dangerous for those of us who love liberty and love care about humans.
Could you expand on that a little bit more? I think that's another perception that society has trouble accepting with the belief system that we've been given, that somebody who is a president, somebody who's a lawyer, a police officer, somebody who's the friendly pharmacist at your local pharmacy could possibly be doing these heinous things behind the scenes. When we see them smiling, we see them high functioning, we see them in a job and a career that's respected, we see them going through school, having families. Can you talk a little bit about the duality and why that's important, that there's front cover stories and altars as well as what they do in the background in the dark?
Yeah, so I'll use our president as an example. The president has this public persona that he is challenging the system, and he's overturning the cabal. Well, you look at people that are in his administration, like his vice president. His vice president was a Bilderberger. That's an Illuminati organization, you know. He's bringing in this AI agenda, which and looking at my notes here, because I wrote down some things, so I would, you know, on July 10th, 2025, Trump came out with America's AI Action Plan, which deregulates optogenetics. Optogenetics is one of the new forms of mind control. Now we've got unchecked optogenetics because supposedly we have to enable innovation, because they in this paperwork that he came out with, it says we need to remove barriers to America's leadership in AI. So on the one hand, they always present a really good excuse for what they want to do. You know, America's in this race for AI. You know, we're going to lose this race. So we've got to remove all barriers so that we win this race. So then they don't talk about optogenetics being mind control. They describe it as light therapy. It's better than pharmaceutical pills, you know. And companies that are helping with this AI, BlackRock, which is an Illuminati investment company, the head of BlackRock is Illuminati. XAI, Neuralink, these are the companies that are behind AI, and the AI is being used. That is a Kabbalistic agenda that goes back to like 1750. There's been a Kabbalistic agenda, and Kabbalism is the philosophy behind Freemasonry and a lot of these other occult organizations. Kabbalism is threaded through Satanism. If you go to a satanic bookstore, you'll see a lot of stuff on Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic tree of life. And Trump is a Kabbalist, and his teachers and their teachers were some of the more important Kabbalists. And Trump himself is not just a Kabbalist, he's also a Freemason. So here we have this image okay, he's fighting the system. He's not part of the system. He's outside of the system. But if you really look close, he's doing their agenda. And back in January of 2025, he did an executive order that removed all the barriers to what could be done with optogenetics, you know. And while I'm on that, let me just talk a little bit about optogenetics. So if you pulse light, flicker rates of blue light, uh, it will, if it's 450 to 495 nanometers at approximately 60 to 667 terahertz, that will create fatigue, anxiety, seizures. You know, if you have 50 hertz fluorescent flicker, it'll cause headaches and meltdowns in 50% of the autistic children, 30% of normal children, and 30% of sensitive adults. I mean, they've run tests. They know what they can do with these things, you know. And so on the one hand, he comes across as going up against the system, but then he's going head over heels pushing their agenda, and people don't even know what their agenda is. So they think, oh, great, AI. You know, when you go online and you look at things, videos now, a lot of it's being generated by AI. And I don't know if people realize, but AI will lie. That rhymes. AI will lie. But it does, you know. And if you ask a computer something and are answered by AI through the internet, they'll tell you sometimes what they think you want to hear. They'll just make up an answer. And you can tell that a lot of these videos are being created by AI because the host that's speaking will speak more rapid than a normal person, and they will mispronounce words that someone who is intelligent is not going to mispronounce. There's some other things too. For instance, the pictures that are being shown in the video will not be in sync with what's being said. They might be talking about the American Civil War and show you pictures from World War II. Or they may be talking about early in World War II and be showing you a Tiger tank, which was a much later development, you know. So if you know history, if you know how to pronounce words, if you have a sense of how fast normal people speak, you'll be able to pick up when the AI is giving you this baloney. And a lot of these videos that are coming out, they're just straight made up. It's just made up stuff. You know, they act like they're teaching you some newly discovered history or what's happening over there in the Ukraine-Russian war or whatever. It's all just made up. And that's how frightening it is that people are so dependent on watching stuff on their cell phones that they don't realize. I mean, okay, so like these little shorts that people uh, get a dopamine rush from, you know, and they're watching, you know, it's really exciting, you know, this cat's doing something like maybe beating up a dog. That might be all AI generated, people. You're not even watching something real. It's just generated to entertain you. So anyway, that's one of the ways that AI can be used. There are many different ways. One way that AI can be used to control your mind. And that's just a real simple method. You know, that's not using trauma and all the other programming modalities that go into this total mind control that the Illuminati do. Um, and so here we got someone that is really idolized, and they've got a hidden side to them, you know. Other examples of that, um, we have organizations that are created like the EPA. Now, what's the EPA? Environmental Protection Agency. It's to protect our environment, right? So I had a friend, she had a business in her home, and she wanted her tree in the front to be sprayed. So she hired a company. They did not spray it with what she asked them to spray. They used something that was more expensive than what she had asked for. It was Agent Orange, and she knew because she took samples of what had been sprayed and had it tested, and it was Agent Orange. So why did they spray something more expensive that was really dangerous? It caused her dogs to get cancer. It caused her children to get cancer. So she asked the EPA to come out and look at this. Did they protect her? Were they interested in doing anything? No. Did they find the company? No. Totally worthless as far as being a protection. And and so look at the Moss Landing. There is a BESS. BESS is a battery energy storage system in Monterey, California. And all kinds of people got headaches and sick from that huge BESS exploding and burning up. And the EPA came in and took control, and their conclusion is it was safe for everybody and nobody was hurt. What about all these people that got sick? What about the environment, the wetlands that were totally destroyed? Well, the EPA didn't see anything amiss. So this is the organization that's supposed to be protecting us. Another example would be the CDC or WHO, World Health Organization. So it's not just with individuals, but they have replicated this this mask or this double life or whatever you want to call it, where they pretend they have a good front, but what's behind that front is just pure evil. And so you're asking about explaining how that works in society. I guess one good way that people can know what I'm talking about is how many politicians in your life, if you're my age, you've seen a lot. You see the politicians when they're running their campaign and they say, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then they turn around when they're elected and do whatever they want. In fact, that happened to my grandfather. You see, my great grandfather didn't want to participate in war, and he was in Germany, and this was before World War I. And he saw that he was very prescient. He goes, all these countries are not building up these huge navies and armies to play with them. There's going to be a war. And he wanted out because he didn't want to be involved in a big war. He got himself smuggled in under some sacks of grain into Holland, and then from Holland came to Kansas and started a farm in Kansas because my people were farmers in northern Kansas. So we continued the tradition of farming. So that was my great grandfather. His son, my grandfather, then had affinity for Germany because we still had German relatives over there. And we didn't believe in war. I mean, that's why he left Germany, so he wouldn't have to participate in war. And so when Woodrow Wilson ran his campaign, I will keep United States out of the war. And then as soon as he became president, he declared war on Germany. It was very quick. within days of becoming president, he went to war with Germany. And my grandfather, who had trusted Woodrow Wilson so much, felt betrayed. And from then on, he voted straight Republican. He said the Democrats can't be trusted. Um, and maybe you might say, well, that's an overreaction because a lot of Republicans can't be trusted either. And that's true. Um, but that's an example of how people are two-faced. They say one thing, but who they are and what they really want to do is something else. And some of these people, if they're multiples, they can actually sound pretty sincere. You look in their eyes when they're telling you these lies and you go, man, I was face to face with this person talking with them and he doesn't believe in that, you know? And then you're just shocked. Well, how did that person say one thing and then totally do something else different? And you're going, how can I be fooled? I mean, I looked at that person eye to eye, and well, it's because sometimes they're program multiples. Maybe one part of them believes something because they've been programmed to believe it. It's a programming script that they're supposed to pretend to be this, this, and this. Um, but another thing about program multiples is they do a lot of acting because that's how they've survived. You know, the programmers want them to be this or that. Some of the parts have to believe that they're a doorknob or that they're Cinderella or whatever. They've had to go along with a lot just to survive. So anyway, I don't know if that was helpful or not, but uh, and by the way, Woodrow Wilson was part of the cabal or whatever you want to call it. So um, there was more than just the fact that he changed his mind. This was all scripted. uh, you got another question there? Another topic? Hopefully, I'm keeping people's interest and I'm saying something of value.
You are. Thank you so much. This is all so valuable, and it helps sort of break down some of the confusion or just reasons why somebody might have a hard time accepting this. And you even mentioned, Freemasonry, the duality of the majority of Freemasons usually are at lower levels. They're men looking to have a brotherhood. They're good people. They're joining something to create camaraderie to help their community. And then at the higher levels, the duality comes in. You have that darkness of people who do bad things and use the cover as a way to shield the evil that exists within the organization at the top levels. And so you can see how there's a light and a dark and a shadow, and an illusion with a lot of things in our society. And I really appreciate you breaking that down because it's important that we realize that. And I had a couple comments on our last video to piggyback off you talking about technology. People wanted to know your views on directed energy weapons, electronic mind control, and ways that maybe people are being abused with electricity in their homes, these people who call themselves targeted individuals. I wanted to see if you had any information on that or any feedback on that.
So this would have been around 1996 or 97. There were 3 ladies that had chips in them, and had messages at that time that they were visiting us. You could see that during the daytime they were being handled by people that would send voices or directions to them through their chips during the day. And then at night, because AI has subtle differences, it switched to AI. And then two of them managed to go to a Oh, haven't been thinking about this for a while. So it's a Faraday cage. That's what it is. They went to a Faraday cage, which could identify if any signals were coming into them, and they were able to, by doing this, to identify that the signals were coming from a Cray computer in a building in Dallas, Texas. And so they actually were able to extract their chips and identify where the signals were coming from that were controlling. Now, a Cray computer in a particular building, what that computer is going to do is going to piggyback off of all kinds of antennas. So I was taking them around to see where we could get away from the signals that were controlling them, driving them nuts, the voices, and and I took them into tunnels, highway tunnels, and that really did work well. It would reduce, but it wouldn't get rid of it. What I learned from working with them is that it's pretty pervasive. I mean, their signals get to you just like a cell phone signal. I mean, it's going to be hard to get out of range of a cell phone signal. Uh, so they had that technology back in the 90s. And then they also had a technology which was patented that they could remotely send signals to your brain to plant thoughts in it. And so they had some remote ways of sending signals to you that way. One of the things too about targeted individuals is, and this is just what I've learned from experience being around these people, and is the controllers, the abusers. In my opinion, my humble opinion, they're crazy. They will absolutely go to the most extreme lengths to harass these people. And so everywhere they go, they're being harassed. And they move to another part of the country, and their harassers get their people in that area to start harassing them. It's absolutely amazing. And you would, as a normal, sane human being, you'd go, why would anyone want to go to that much trouble? Well, they will, because that's the insanity of it. They just love to control and to make everybody miserable. So, unfortunately, targeted individuals can go through enormous amount of harassment, and some of these people have testified before Congress. If you're a targeted individual, I'm sorry for that. Just know that you're not alone. It's really hard to get out of the range of your abuser. Yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it and take the next question.
And piggybacking off of all of this, obviously throughout time, their goal has been to have less children dying that they're doing this to, so they can proliferate it at a faster rate. They're trying to make this technology, this trauma-based mind control technology, more efficient. And in time, there's been infiltration of government, but we know through MK Ultra, through Monarch, through the sub-projects that we are aware of that they've released, that at some point it was very important to collide and collaborate with government on a more official level to add more science, laboratory work, studies, and to refine this on a level where the research could be very, very scientific and refined, which is what we see now. Could you talk a little bit about that revolution and what what happened to refine mind control and sort of bring it to the level that we're at now?
Good question again. So Joseph Mengele was very important to them. He was an excellent mind control programmer, excellent trauma-based mind control programmer. Some of the people I worked with were programmed by him. But you ever wonder why the Nazis had so many people in these concentration camps and why they tortured them and traumatized them and whatnot? Well, one of the reasons why is they used these people as human guinea pigs to find out how much trauma you could give a person before they died. You know, they had to figure out these charts. If you're so much weight, you can endure so much electric shock before you die. You know, they had to get all of these charts filled out as to how much trauma, torture they could give someone. Because when they went to programming someone with trauma, they had to know just how far they could give them a near-death experience without killing them. So their charts are pretty scientific. They have got it down pretty accurate. So yeah, to do research on that level, you need something like the Nazi government with concentration camps and someone like Joseph Mengele doing experiments to get that information. Another example of experimentation was the Japanese experiment, had a special unit that did horrible experiments in Manchuria. And after the war, those Japanese were not prosecuted, and their information was all hijacked by the United States so that we could continue doing that horrific research. So, you know, this gets back to the good face. United States puts on a good face, our government, and yet what are they involved with? You know, they're taking over this horrific Japanese research where people were used as human guinea pigs and killed, and then they're taking all that research and going further with it. So, hey, my, yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of good things about the United States. Don't get me wrong, a lot of good things, but we have an out of control government and they are out of control because they are just subservient to the Illuminati. They just do just look at the World Economic Forum. Trump just was over at the World Economic Forum. That's an Illuminati organization. And Zelensky was there. You know, that's really nice. You know, so much for Trump being against the cabal. He was right there in the midst of them at their big annual meeting. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Great answer. It's interesting throughout history, through your research and other researchers and even survivors who have been speaking out for a long time, to watch this evolution happen and to see its refinement in real time, even though it's been hidden. And we just get bits and pieces of it through documentation that the CIA releases or a testimony here and there that might generate a little bit of interest mainstream and be heard. But it's really scary how far they've come in such a short time, especially when you look at some of the history that you've detailed. I'm sure it was a lot slower how they refined this, you know, back in the Egyptian or biblical days when they didn't have all the technology. Well, that goes to, you know, that's another conspiracy in itself if technology existed back then, because it likely did, but we're told it didn't. So you think about maybe some of the limitations that existed in the past and during sort of the Industrial Revolution and technology coming out, how quickly this mind control and whether it's on an individual level or on a mass scale has just boomed, and I think one of the things that I want to ask and talk about now is what is the big picture of this? Why do they want to do this? What is this new world order that these elite that you just talked about that have these secret meetups that survivors talk about? What is this? What is the whole big picture of what they want to do with all of this?
Well, the answer, as I understand it, which would be hard for some people to assimilate because they may not be Christian, but this is the end game is for the Antichrist to rule this world. In other words, rather than allowing God to have his creation in his paradise, they want a satanic new world order. But not everybody is able to assimilate that answer. So there's other ways to approach explaining it all. These, whatever you want to call them, cabal, oligarchs, Illuminati, kingpins, they don't want to be rich. That might surprise you, me saying. They own the means where wealth is created. They run, the U.S. Treasury. They run the Federal Reserve. These people are the ones who create money. The banksters, whatever. They have plenty of money. They have all the money they want. What they want is control. They are control freaks. So if you study how much the NSA and the CIA know and control, like this year, they want even more the next year. It is absolutely insane. This is another insanity. They're addicted to control. And so in our lifetime, we have just seen this enormous escalation of control of everything in our life. At the same time that everything's being more and more controlled, there's more and more secrecy. So, as an editor of a newspaper, I went to our local post office to interview the postmaster, and he shouted real loud to all of his employees, "This is how you treat the news media. You don't tell them anything." I don't even think he would have told me the price of a stamp. It's that insane. What? You're not going to tell me anything? But if you went there on a normal day and you chit-chatted with that guy, I know because I've seen him, he'll chit-chat about all kinds of stuff with people that are in line. But you're the news media? No, he's not going to tell you diddly squat. Not even the price of the stamp. This is the kind of secrecy we have going on. They want to know everything about you, but they're not going to tell anything about themselves. And they've got all of these ways of hiding behind it. So in our county, they did soil surveys of our soil, and on a particular given farm or on a field, they will have it detailed out what kinds of soil are in every little locality in that field. It's very detailed. And they came out for our county in 1966 with the soil survey map. Okay. For years, they had those soil survey maps in hard copy where you could go and get them here in the county. But you can't anymore. You can go online, and if you can somehow intuitively figure out how to get to it online, because all of the things that you have to guess, you go to this place and you have to hit on this, and then you have to hit on this. You can eventually get to a digital copy, but I don't think hardly anyone would ever figure out how to get to that digital copy. So here's something worthwhile that essentially they have made in a practical sense uh, invisible to the public. Try calling the IRS and getting someone to talk to you, you know. At the same time, they want to know everything about us. So you see the trend here is just this insane need to control. And that's what we have going on. But then is this to control things to make things better? No, it's controlling things to create a new world order with an antichrist. And then that's a whole complicated agenda right there, because you'll have antichrist putting down antichrist. So it's going to be a tumultuous time, to say the least, in these next few years. And then, like you and I talking, there's the possibility of this Black Awakening. So a lot of the trauma-based mind control people that I dealt with, you start getting down into the deeper programming, and you find out that they have Armageddon programming. And that is, helter skelter. It's what been called helter skelter too. It's a time when they can flip these systems. And going back to something that we talked about earlier, when you build these mind controlled systems in these people's minds, you will always build a light side and a dark side. Why? Think it through, people. If you're going to build a car, design a car, you need build that car to go left or right, backwards or forward. So they build these systems with a light side and a dark side. So they can be a really good person if they need to be, or they can be as evil as the Illuminati. This is that Luciferian dichotomy that you see. So a lot of these Christian ministers, they're program multiples. So they come across as really good, but if the Illuminati want to flip their system, they just say the right codes, they bury the light side, the dark side comes up, and now you have someone who's a Satanist. So if they want this dark awakening, they could flip the systems across the globe, and then Christianity would basically, what we see as Christianity would be very unpopular and basically extincted, except for a few people that were true Christians. And you would see this massive movement toward Satanism and Luciferianism. And along with this, then they have people programmed to go out and actually hunt Christians down, true Christians down, and kill them. So this is something that could happen. It sounds really outrageous, I know, but it's one of the cards that they hold that they could play. And I mean, come on, how many people here 2 years ago could have predicted that the president of the United States would be talking about invading Greenland? I could not have predicted that. Greenland is part of the Danish Empire, and Denmark's a NATO ally, and the United States has bases already on Greenland. It's not like we need, we have had bases there all along. Clear back to World War II, we had bases there. And so it's not like we haven't had a presence. We've even had secret bases there. And so who would have thought that the president of the United States would be talking about invading it. You know, I couldn't have predicted that. So again, you know, this is one of the cards that the Illuminati have. They might flip the system, and we would go into this helter skelter dark time where good is just put down and Luciferianism becomes the religion, the popular religion of everyone. That's one of the purposes of the mind control. Like I say, there's a lot of Armageddon programming out there in people. Another reason for the mind control is they need it for their satanic rituals. Another reason is so that they can hide the evil things that they do. You know, the pedophilia. They make a lot of money off of running children and women. There's other evil things that they do too. The drug trade, that's connected with the Illuminati. They network in with all these cartels. So a lot of the money that the Illuminati make is not from the drug trade or something. It's the carry trade. It's the merchant ships that go all around the world carrying goods. You know, the carry trade. They make a lot of money off of transporting goods from, let's say, China to America, or from America to South America, from South America to North America. They make a lot of money off of that. And you think about it, who has the money to buy an oil tanker? Not small people like you or me. It's these rich Illuminati kingpins are the ones that can buy these merchant ship lines and all of this stuff. So, you know, they make money from a lot of different ways, but the mind control helps them in so many ways, so many places. Yeah, and okay, another thing that it's good for. So they use Hollywood to control our thinking. You know, for instance, my wife was just talking about some stuff that Hollywood did decades ago where they made people think that farmers are just country bumpkins that are stupid, you know. So you have actors that do these scripts that make somebody who's watching a movie think, oh, you know, 5 acres, you know, somebody who's a farmer is just a dumb klutz that doesn't know anything. Or somebody who believes in Christianity is just a shyster. You know, they have these agendas of things that they demonize. Well, they want the people that are acting in these movies to be controlled. Because if somebody in Hollywood could get up and start talking, people idolize Hollywood stars, and that star would have a platform to talk. So they don't like those people to be able to expose or go against what they're doing. So it's nice that these are program multiple. And Roseanne Barr is an example of someone who's high profile Hollywood program multiple. And she has done a little bit of exposing of what's gone on in Hollywood, but there's so much more that she could expose that she hasn't. And I don't know how free she's gotten. I know she worked some with Kathy O'Brien. Uh, what other interesting questions do you have?
Well, we're coming up on the 2 hour-ish mark. So
Oh,
I always like to end conversations with some high notes. But before I switch the subject, I think we covered so much and like laid a really good groundwork. But I know you took some notes on things you wanted to talk about. So I wanted to give you an opportunity if there's anything to sort of tie up this section of what we were talking about. I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that.
um, my notes that I had were just prepared on the optogenetics. But people can start investigating optogenetics themselves, and they have to inject stuff into a person to change your genetics to get the full benefit of optogenetics. So that's another thing that we have to be aware of, is that they're they're putting stuff into our food, our water, our shots that are they're trying to change our DNA. So we're being hit from so many different angles, and but you want to end this on a high note, and that's very good. There's some things that I say to try to get people to realize it's not all hopeless. So I'll say these different kinds of things. So if you have light, light just naturally conquers darkness. It just you shine a light and it overpowers the darkness. And that is the way. If you take the moral high ground, and I've seen people do this, they took the moral high ground and they were successful. It's not a matter that you have to have a big army behind you or something. If you have the moral high ground, you win. And another thing too is each one of us feels like we're practically nothing. I was a little person out there. I had no clout. Emma said a lot of nice things about the impact that I had, but I was just one person. And if we think of a thunderstorm, like we just had this big storm, Fern come through half of the United States, those raindrops, those snowflakes, a storm is made up of little individual raindrops. What's going on in Iran? It's made up of little people going out there and protesting. So, we're all little, but as like a rainstorm, all those little raindrops together can make a big impact. The human spirit, it totally amazes me how no matter what people are subjected to, the human spirit pulls through. If you look at a country like Ireland and what they were subjected to, but they came through on the other end. And, the Soviet Union, they subjected to their people to horrendous things. But when the Soviet Union fell, good people rose to the surface. So the human spirit is hard to take down. And there have been lots of people that are listening to your show, Emma, that are the human spirit in them and the good that God's put in there. It's revolting against this evil. It's revolting against the control. It's revolting against the trauma. And they are making steps for liberty. They're making steps to do good things and help other people. So there's a lot of force for good within the human spirit. I wouldn't write off the human race entirely, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of powerful people that are Luciferians. Um, yeah, I guess that's what I'd say. Don't give up hope. we never want to give up hope. We can't. Hope is like gas in a car. You know, I mean, if you lose your hope, you're just going to be stranded somewhere. It does no good to give up hope. That's nothing beneficial. Um, so so look within yourself and find other good people that you can work with that will befriend you, and keep on keeping on, people. And I appreciate your audience. I've got so many good emails from so many people that are wanting to deal with their trauma-based mind control, that want to understand better what's going on. And one other thing is, I need to get everybody that has written me for books. I need to get your names on lists. And so when I do have books available, I can contact you and try to see if you still want some. So, the last chapter on that whole issue hasn't been written. I do want to take care of you. I do. I hope sometime in the future I can get something to you. So don't totally give up on me. Just kind of have patience for me, because it's like I told Emma, I work 60 hours a week, and then I have a family too. And it's just real difficult for me to get much done beside my job. And so anyway, on that note, I thank you for listening, and I appreciate Emma and what she's doing. And I hope you guys will continue supporting her show, because it's an opportunity for people like me to tell the truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Fritz. We can't wait to have you back on again. And thank you so much for spending this time sharing all this valuable information. And of course, for all the work that you've done historically. I can't tell you how many times your name has been referenced on here. There's people you'll never hear from, probably millions of people that you impacted. And I'm sure sometimes this road has been very lonely and isolating. And especially before we had all the technology that we have now to be connected, but your work has really impacted people every single generation and just keeps expanding. So it's timeless, and it's amazing how many people they're still here today because of you. What a testament to the work that you've done and all the sacrifices that you've made, that even one life was saved, much less countless. So just thank you for all the work that you're doing, and we can't wait to continue this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you.
And for everybody listening, I'll have all my information in the show notes. Please share this episode, leave encouragement for Fritz. And you guys, thank you so much for listening. God bless you all, and we will see you next time.